All right, we got the first repeat guest on the podcast, and that guest is Megan Benzik. A lot has happened since we last spoke, maybe in, when was that? Sometime last fall or early winter, talking about training and sort of dedicating your life to competitive fitness. And then at regionals, Megan was one of the athletes randomly selected for drug testing, and she tested positive for kind of a lot of stuff, although she only knew that she was taking Anabar, which was contaminated with a bunch of other stuff, as well as Vyvanse, which is a prescription ADD, ADHD medication, but one that you're not really allowed to take while competing in the sport of fitness. But Megan, unlike a lot of folks who've come up with some pretty creative excuses that we've seen, actually just kind of owned it and was like, yeah, you know what? I did it. Sorry, just kind of snapped me out of some bizarre justifications and negative cognitive spirals that I was in. And so I thought it'd be really interesting to actually get her perspective on all this stuff. And something I think is important to note is that we talk about a lot of reasons and explanations and stuff like that in this podcast. And, it's not intended to be a justification or an excuse or anything like that. I'm much more interested in what is the psychology of someone who actually, knowingly cheats in a sport that they're sort of dedicating their life to. How do you sort of get yourself to that place? Especially Megan as someone who, I've worked with as a coach, for a while, for a few years. So just really getting her to sort of, talk through what was her experience. How did she end up in the spot she ended up? I think is well worth the time for your listen. So check this out. If you're not on the email newsletter, you're screwing up. Go ahead, get on that. It's toddneef.com and enjoy.
Austin and I are looking to live the van life soon.
What's up with that? Why would you do that?
So we just want to live a simpler life, really. After the whole CrossFit thing, well, it's always been something I've wanted to do.
Hold on. You've always wanted to live in a van.
Well, I guess not for forever, but for a while, it's been something that we've talked about wanted to do. Just like being in nature and being able to wake up somewhere new all the time. And I've never wanted to own a house necessarily, because then that's picking one place you have to live. My biggest thing was that I wanted to wait till my training was done, because I'm really big on sleep, and it's going to be hard at first. And then he suggested it, and he doesn't seem to think it's going to affect his training. So I was like, all right, now is the time for me to do it.
Yeah.
So we found one that we really liked, but it was expensive. So we're trying to figure out the loan details. And then in the meantime, Austin's been just blowing up my phone with vans, because he's obsessing over finding the perfect van. So now he has to have it now.
So by van, do you mean like a Volkswagen van, or like an RV or something in between, or
in between, like a Mercedes Sprinter van, okay, or like Ford or Dodge have Sprinter vans, and they're built out, so I have everything you need in there.
Yeah.
And then we shower at OPEX or the gym I coach at, so that works.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, there's a bunch of bands will take one of those Sprinters or a 16-passenger van and build bunks in it and all that shit. So kind of like that. Yeah.
And what's funny is a while ago, James Fitzgerald said that if we get a Mercedes van, we could park in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And I don't think he knew that was actually going to happen. So now Austin's going to let him know.
Yeah. I think Austin, I actually remember Austin texting me about that probably maybe 6 months ago or something.
Yeah.
He was like, James said that I can do this or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I know he's kind of a hippie, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. But I didn't, same thing. I was like, okay, sounds good, man. You're not going to actually do that. Cool. But yeah.
Now we're actually selling our stuff and making it happen. So
that's cool. Are you going to drive around also, or are you just going to be parking lot people?
We're pretty much going to be around here. Somebody actually suggested I should sign up for dog sitting, and that people have you dog sit overnight.
Oh, interesting.
So then they pay you, but then we'd also have a place to park.
Yeah.
So I might look into that. But otherwise it's going to be campgrounds or parking lot when I have to coach early in the morning. So
yeah,
that'll be fun.
The parking lot people.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why I want a van, because it's actually stealthy. People don't know that there's actually people living in there. So
are you gonna
we'll see how that goes.
You're gonna give kids candy and stuff?
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, you're definitely going to have to invest in some like Jolly Ranchers and like Reese's peanut butter cups
Something like that.
to get the local children to enjoy your van.
The van.
So when are you guys actually doing it?
We set a deadline to like sell everything by December, but he's like, now they found one he likes, and then like we're figuring out the loan. He's like looking for cheaper ones too. Like he wants it now.
Okay.
So like probably like end of September. We just have to give 30 days notice on our lease here. So we plan on staying around here. But after the whole CrossFit thing and like not doing CrossFit anymore, I associated myself so much with CrossFit and identified with that. And then afterwards, I like took down my regional signs because it was like, okay, like, you know, trying to move on. Kind of like it was literally like a breakup.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was good because it was like I wasn't associating myself with CrossFit. Like there's more out there. And then we started thinking about all this stuff we have that we don't necessarily need and how we just like associate ourselves with these things that like make us we are. But like it's really not about that. Yeah, so we're just kind of like getting rid of everything and just want to live simpler. It's not going to be easy, but it'll be simple and we'll be able to travel and see new places. So, yeah, that's kind of like where we're at now, looking into that.
Yeah. So, I mean, have you, I guess, been reading like books about like minimalism or like being part of any of those like tiny house communities, or is this kind of like a separate trajectory from all that stuff?
Yeah, so we've been looking online for like at the tiny house and the van people and all of that, and like kind of like gathering resources and stuff like that. And we really like that whole culture. But I would say this mostly stemmed from like actually going more towards the spiritual side, like Eckhart Tolle. We've been like reading books like that, Michael Singer. And so like all of that has kind of like made us look more inward, especially me, and just like reevaluate everything. And yeah, it just makes me want to do it even more. So seeing the actual community and how people live, it's like, yeah, like I like that.
Yeah. So it's sort of like attempting to detach from sort of like earthly pleasures, so to speak.
Yeah, kind of just like stuff you don't need, you know? Yeah. But then at the same time, it's like, you got to be careful to not reattach to like van life and just being a van, you know what I mean? Like, so we've been kind of going into stuff like that. And
do people who are like part of the van life community, do they judge people who don't quite live like enough out of a van? They're like, oh, well, you actually like have a shower. Like you're not.
I'm not sure yet, but we have found that there are like RV people and van people, and it is different.
Yeah.
So, but we haven't been like in it long enough to like figure that out.
Okay.
But I guess like RV people are usually older, and so they don't always like the van people. So, yeah, that's pretty much all we've figured out.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like subcultures like that, it's very easy for people who are very far in one extreme to just like war with the people who are like right next to them.
Yeah.
It's like you also have decided to live in this tube of metal with tires, but not in the exact same way as me. So therefore I hate you. Yeah.
No, but it's like the type of people too, from what we've seen, are usually more positive and just like chill because they're all about nature and just like, yeah. So then that's good too.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it probably does select for a softer soul.
Yeah.
A gentler type of person.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a few times, breaking up with CrossFit.
Yeah.
the big breakup.
The big breakup.
Yeah. So clarify that. What do you mean by that? Why are you breaking up with CrossFit?
Well, CrossFit broke up with me.
Yeah.
They did not like what I was taking. So at regionals, I actually got tested before regionals. I didn't know they randomly did tests, and I knew I wasn't going to hit top 5. So I like didn't think anything of it. I didn't really like plan. I was feeling really guilty at the time about it. But I was just still kind of like, it's all I'd known for 7 years. So I just kept doing it. And they called me in the back before, it was like the Thursday before regionals.
Oh, so like at check-in?
Huh?
At check-in?
Yeah, at check-in, they grabbed me right away. So that was really intense. And I had to, like, I went through the whole weekend because part of me wanted to withdraw from the competition, but then like part of me was in extreme denial, like, oh, well, they won't find anything, even though I knew they were going to. And so competing, it definitely was not the same at all. Like I was distracted. Like some of the workouts, I was just thinking how it'd probably be my last time on the floor. And so that was really hard. So yeah. And then it was just a waiting game after that. They didn't tell me how long. The people who took the drug test said that they didn't know that it would take a couple weeks, but they didn't know when the samples were going out and that they don't ever get the results. So no one knows the results except CrossFit, and it's up to CrossFit to decide what they do with those results. So it's just like waiting for that email from CrossFit. So that was pretty intense because it was like I was still training, but at the same time, like I knew. And so it was like this whole like mental thing. And then when I got the email, it was long enough to where I was like able to just accept it right away and be like, okay, so like, here we go. Like I have to make my statement and kind of go forward with that. And yeah, so I was taking it like one day at a time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then I guess just to clarify for people who may be listening, who might not be familiar with the situation, what exactly did you test positive for?
So I tested positive for Anavar, oxandrolone. Was the main one. I've always been on Vyvanse for a while, and that was prescribed to me. So like there were times I knew it was something you shouldn't take. So there were times where I would try to go off of it, but then I would just get so tired that there were times when I would have to drive really far to work that I was almost like falling asleep behind the wheel. So that was the original reason why Vyvanse was prescribed to me, with just like having lupus and everything. It was my rheumatologist that prescribed it. And
Vyvanse is effectively like an amphetamine, correct?
Amphetamine, yeah. So, I mean, it was like if I would work out super early, it would make my heart rate go too high. So it would almost be like not good in that respect. But in the long haul, it like allowed me to train, and like I was able to coach and like do all that and like feel okay. The Anavar, so my list of things I tested positive for was way longer than I thought it was going to be, because I guess the Anavar was contaminated with other stuff, which people say that the stuff it was contaminated with, like usually would never be mixed in with it. I honestly don't even know like what the substances were. So then it kind of made me look at some of the other stuff I was taking, and I've kind of just really stopped taking most supplements right now. But yeah, so that was the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And like you mentioned, there was a whole bunch of stuff that you actually tested positive for, some of which just like doesn't make any sense either, where it's like, yeah, like why would you be taking an aromatase inhibitor? Like there's no reason for that.
Yeah. So I actually didn't know, but I guess Vyvanse does have like an estrogen blocker in it, which I had no idea about that. I just thought it was like strict, like, because it's usually prescribed for ADHD or whatever. So like focus and amphetamine. So I didn't know any of that was in there. So yeah.
Yeah.
So it looked way worse than it was. Like people were probably thinking I had needles hanging out everywhere. Like, no, not at all. Anavar is just like a small like supplement pill, just like all the rest. So yeah, I didn't think, then that goes into like justifications and everything.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and so for you, you show up at regionals and you're like, all right, time to check in. And then what? They're like, all right, Megan, like come with us. Like what's that situation? Yeah,
that was literally what it was like. When I went to check in, I saw my name on the list and it was highlighted, and so were a couple other names. So I thought it was weird. And the one guy is like, all right, come with me to the back. So I went in the back. I'm like, okay, what's going on? Like, and yeah, they told me I had to do a drug test. So I immediately was like, obviously trying to find any way out of it, because it was just like such a shock that it was actually happening. Like, well, like I'm on like prescription, and like, how do I get or like a note for that? And he's like, you'll handle it all later. But they made me stay in the back until I went. So I couldn't even like go away to figure out what I wanted to do, or like, yeah. So
yeah, so
it was just like, I had to sit back there, and like, I did not have to go. So it was like really hard. I was back there for like an hour, and yeah.
Oh, so you're just like waiting until you can actually like force urine out of your body, basically?
Yeah. And my body was just like, don't do it. Like, it's not going to be good. So yeah, it was pretty stressful.
Yeah. So that entire time you're just like, uh-oh, like I know I'm caught, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I didn't like, I knew that that was something that would be in your system for a long time. And I really just didn't, it was something I was just like literally putting in my pill box with everything else. And like, I knew I was on it. And so like training at OPEX and like no one else knew. So it would suck when I was still like losing the workouts and then it would make me feel guilty. And it's kind of like, why am I trying to push my body this hard when I'm like taking this and I'm still not doing what I want to do? But I do think there's a lot of like mental aspects. I thought training with people better than me would help me, and I think it really actually just hurt me mentally. But yeah, so where's I going with that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that that's something that I would be curious about is, I mean, sort of like you mentioned, right? It's like at some level you can just do a little math problem and be like, okay, I'm going to be at regionals at this time, and this drug clears the system at this time. So, I mean, why wouldn't you just like stop taking it before going to regionals?
Right. Well, yeah, and that was part of it is like I just felt so stupid too. Like, okay, like yeah, you have to be really dumb to like fail a test. And it's like, it was just as simple as like, I had no idea they did random testing like that. And I knew I wasn't going to hit top 5. So I didn't think it mattered. You know what I mean? Like, and I honestly like didn't feel as good going into regionals in 2018 than I did in 2017. So like in my mind, I was like, well, I just don't want to look ridiculous. And so like, I just didn't think about it and kept taking it. Yeah.
So kind of like all right, well, I'm going to get out here and I want to at least look like I belong. So I better.
Yeah, kind of. Cause I like didn't feel ready, even though honestly, I probably would have been fine, but it was just like training with the people I was training with and like always coming in last. And I think it was just getting to me. It's like, yeah, even like if I wouldn't have been taking it, like I think I probably would have placed I might have even placed better because of like how much it affected me when I was on the floor, knowing I got drug tested. But yeah, it was just like, I knew I was going to be like bottom half. And so like, I didn't think that it would even affect like the top people, even though the points all do shuffle up. And so I never looked at it as like taking a spot away from someone or like taking, I just like justified it and yeah, went on with it, I guess.
Yeah. So how did you, I mean, I guess it's so stressful even competing under normal circumstances, right? That it's like a loud environment with a bunch of chaotic stuff happening and you kind of have to like get all jacked up to compete, but you also have to sort of like wait in your little corral for a while and there's a bunch of people watching. It was just like a very kind of like hectic and stressful experience. So, I mean, what was your thought process kind of like going through the events and going through the workouts then that weekend of regionals?
So it was hard. Like I had a lot of thinking time on that runner.
Oh yeah.
I was just kind of like trying to accept the fact that it was like pretty much going to be over for me as far as competing.
So you basically knew you're like, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I was just like hoping for any miracle. I was kind of like even thinking like, oh, well, maybe if I don't place well, they won't even test it because it costs a lot of money. Like I was like trying to think of anything that would possibly like get me out of it. I mean, now I am glad I was caught because like I needed that, but at the time. So there were like some events where I was able to like really zone in and like still just actually have fun with it. So like when I was running, it was like I was able to push that last bit and that was kind of like, yeah, I was able to kind of block it out after a while and just kind of go with it. But then like the next event, the second event that day, I think was Linda.
It was, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember like doing my cleans and just like being on the floor and just like all of a sudden it just like came into my mind like this is probably gonna be the last time you're on the floor, this weekend. So like take it in. And it's just like distracting because when you're competing, like in 2017 when I competed, like I wasn't taking anything and like I was able to get in that flow because the only thing that mattered at that time was like doing the next rep and doing the next movement and like chasing down people and it was fun. Whereas this was more like I was worried about like I knew it was going to be my last time. So it kind of sucked because I wasn't ready to like accept that yet. But at the same time, like I was trying to enjoy it because I knew it was going to be my last time. So it was like this weird, like I really didn't know what to do at that point. It was still so like it had just happened type of thing.
Yeah. And you're kind of like bouncing back and forth in your head between like, oh, maybe I can still somehow sneak out of this versus like, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, the only thing I knew to do was just to like keep going and just like get through the weekend and then like try to figure it out from there. But yeah, even in the warm up area, it was just like, I wanted to tell Mike and James so bad, and like, cause they had no idea. And I just like, then part of me was like, no, cause it's regional weekend. It's pretty stressful for them. So I probably shouldn't bring that up right now. But then it was like, maybe they would tell me if I should withdraw or not. And like, yeah, it was just kind of all of a mental battle. I mean, Austin was the first person I told. He didn't know prior to that. And so I was obviously affected like later in the day and all of that. So he knew that like I was going through that, but he's like, yeah, you shouldn't have done it. Like now you have to deal with the consequences type of thing. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were essentially, thinking about, okay, how is me potentially dropping this on, other people going to affect them, while also just sort of trying to like get through the weekend. Yeah. I mean, that's complicated.
Yeah. And I think it was like the last day. What was that? The first event on the last day?
It was the, was it the chipper?
Oh, yeah. So like I love chippers, and like I was excited for that workout. So like that workout, I was able to just like, okay, like this is the last, just go and have fun with it. And I did do well, and I was able to block that out a little bit, which was nice. But then the last workout came, and it was the thrusters and rope climbs, and like it was just there because I knew it was like literally my last time on the floor. And so like I literally just broke down after that. Like nobody saw, because I like ran to the bathroom, but it was hard just knowing that. So yeah, I mean, like not to get sympathy, because like it was definitely deserved, and like now I'm glad that it happened, but at the time it was hard. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, I think that, independent of any sort of like moral judgment of, using performance enhancing drugs, that to me, I guess just like the actual process of going through that and like what happens and like what your emotions were during those specific moments, I mean, are super interesting to anyone who like cares about sport, right? Because it's people trying to push themselves and dealing with like challenges and trying to come up with ways around them. And it's just like, well, you end up in some pretty complicated situations sometimes.
Yeah, definitely not good.
Yeah.
And then it was hard coming back too, because there were some people that could tell that I wasn't myself competing. I mean, if you saw me competing, I'm sure there were certain events where you're like, why is she doing that? Or like, that doesn't look like how she normally would compete.
Actually, yes, for sure. Cause yeah. I did stream some of that regional, and I think it was like the snatch workout.
Yeah, it was bad too. Yeah.
Where I was like, I mean, come on, Megan, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. That was like another one that just like got in my head, and yeah, it was harder to push. So coming back, and like everyone's wondering what to say, because I got 15th the year before and then like finished 26th this year. And like I was still hoping that like for some reason there'd be a miracle and like it wouldn't get out there. So then I was like, I had to lie to people almost. I would try to work my way around it and telling them that I was just off or distracted on the events, and just like telling them how I learned from it and like mindset, which I did. Like there is a clear difference. Like 2017, I was like, had the perfect mindset for doing like what I need to do. And then 2018 was totally off. So I just kind of tried to go that route with explaining to people like why there were certain events I didn't do well on. But so that was hard too, because I was like, just this continual lie, because everyone wants to hear about regionals. It was just like, okay, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that people also, even though they can be well-meaning, will sort of like ask questions or say stuff, particularly to like competitive athletes, that isn't like terribly helpful.
Yeah.
Right? Where they're like, oh, like, how was it? Or they're like, we know you're going to kill it or whatever. And it's like this weird stuff that kind of like puts you in a position where you feel like you're dependent, or that they like need you to do well, like for them. And it's kind of weird. And then they also will ask questions in a way that like doesn't quite focus on like the right things. I don't know. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like, it's putting pressure on you without them realizing. So like, oh, this is a workout you're going to crush. And so then like you're in that workout, and if you don't feel like you're crushing it halfway through, then like it can mentally just break you.
Yeah, for sure. It's that they think that they're being helpful by telling you you're going to do a good job, but they're really just like creating a box that like, well, if you don't do a good job, then you weren't as good as I thought you were, and I don't like you anymore. Right.
And like, even if you realize that and like you try to go around that, it like is still really hard. Yeah. Because you even start, what I realized, I wasn't feeling pressure from anyone around me, really. Like James and Mike were super supportive, and it was always just like, do the best you can. But I was putting pressure on myself anyway, because I was like, James and Mike are really spending a lot of time helping me, and like, yeah, just kind of going forward with that. So yeah. I guess it was just like a lot of pressure that I was putting on myself. I didn't realize it because I was so wrapped up in everything. So
yeah, I think that I mean, you mentioned already just kind of like the complicated justifications and stuff like that. So, for you're one of the few people who actually, gets caught using a performance enhancing drug and is like, yep, I did it. Like,
yeah,
almost everyone else across sport, right? Whether it's CrossFit or track and field or whatever, like has some complicated story about how like their doctor said it was okay, or that like, it was a contaminated supplement or like all this kind of stuff. And sometimes that happens. Like that's absolutely a possibility. I think we were talking beforehand just about, the supplement manufacturing side of things where like different facilities will get used for different things and they don't clean the equipment. And so stuff like actually does get contaminated, that people will be prescribed medication for actual conditions that they have that, might cause them to pop on a drug test and they just don't even realize it. Cause it's like, oh, I was taking that for like my Crohn's disease. I just didn't realize that it was like a thing.
Right.
But, for you didn't try to go down any of those roads of like, oh no, it's like whatever. So, I mean, why not?
So I think it was just like the buildup. Like I was just waiting so long for that email. And then I finally got the email saying what I tested positive for. And they gave me the option to appeal. And I could have appealed the Vyvanse because I had a prescription for that. But it was like, what does that really matter? Like, I knew I shouldn't have been taking it anyway. Whether or not it was helping me, like, I believe like it helped give me energy. So like, I still felt guilty about it. So it was just like, yeah, like from the time I knew I got caught, it like snapped me out of like justifying that it was okay. And so it was just like this buildup that I was dealing with for so long. Because I think, when was it released? I think it was middle of April.
I honestly don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember. But like, I literally knew it was going to come back since before regionals and then all that time. So it almost like, it was scary to make that post. Like it was like, I rewrote it a couple times and like figured out what to say. But it was like, also it was a relief. Like it did feel good to get it out there. And it was like, well, let's just see what happens. And like, I was ready for the worst from everyone. Like, I was like, everyone's just going to be like, oh, you cheater, like this and that. And like, people were a lot more supportive because I was honest about it, which was very interesting. And like, good to know, I guess. So yeah, I guess that's why I went that route. Cause it was just like, it was actually making me feel guilty. And so it did feel good to just get it out there. And it's like, now I literally have nothing to hide from anyone, which is like a really good feeling.
Yeah. What does that email from CrossFit actually look like? Is it like an automated email? It's like, hello, Megan, like you have tested positive for like blank, like please click here to appeal. Or is it like,
no, I mean, it did kind of come off as being automated. So I'm sure it's like a template, but it was signed by like whoever's in charge of the drug testing. And it was more just like, respond to this email and let us know if you plan to appeal it. So I was just like, I just responded back. I was like, no, I don't plan to appeal. Thank you. And that was it. Yeah. I was like, I just like want this to be over with.
Yeah. And did they have any more communication with you after that? Or was it just like, that was it?
No, well, they did send another one and it was just saying like what my, it was like a week later maybe. So it was still like some time. So I'm like sitting here like, okay, when are they going to release it? And it was just saying what my penalty was going to be. And that was going to be banned for 4 years now that I'm choosing to not appeal. And that they would be releasing the results. And so I thought it was going to be released that day. And then it was still like another couple days before they released it. And so, yeah, the release day, I had no idea. It was just like all of a sudden I got a text from someone asking me about it. And I was like, oh shit, they must have posted this somewhere. So I'm like looking where they posted it and then like getting ready to make my post. And yeah, so it was like a couple back and forth before they actually like made it public. Yeah. And in the meantime, I was like, the first thing I did actually was let my boss know at the CrossFit gym coaching at, 'cause I'm like, I don't know how you want to handle this. Like, do you not want me coaching here anymore? Like, what are you going to do? Like, I don't know what the members are going to think, this and that. But he was really cool about it. So,
yeah.
And yeah, the members were great too. So like the support was way more than I expected. So that helped a lot
Yeah.
at the time.
They're all like, we take Anavar too. It's okay.
Yeah. No. I honestly, like, if I would have placed higher, people probably would have been more apt to like attack. I think it was more like, oh, she was taking it and she still didn't do well. Like, that sucks. And I'm just like, oh. But it was taken before. Yeah. I don't know.
Have you seen Icarus?
Yeah, I have actually.
Yeah, right. Where, I mean, the dude does the race, that bike race clean and finished. I don't remember his placings, but it was like 14th. And then he was like doped to the gills the next year and did significantly worse. So it's like, not always that simple.
Right. And I actually do think there's a lot of like mental aspects to that. Like, people who are taking stuff like that to help them with their performance, they already don't believe in themselves. And when you're thinking that you're weaker than the rest of the field, like, you're not going to do well because you're going into it with that mindset. And so you're not going to believe you can actually push and pass the next person. You're not going to do it. And so that was interesting too, because 2017, I know that, like, I don't think you expect me to place that well based on how my training was going. I felt like my training was going bad leading up to it, but then like I was all of a sudden ready and I just didn't have any expectations on myself. And so I was chasing anyone down I could because I wasn't like categorizing myself as like needing something to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I believe that I could actually do it on my own in 2017, whereas 2018, it was like, I obviously felt like I needed something to compete. And so, yeah, I mean, besides knowing that I got caught, it was still one of those, it was very mental. Yeah.
For sure. So, I mean, you mentioned also, I mean, just like this combination of, I guess, guilt in terms of you knowing that you're doing something that's like potentially ethically wrong and also obviously like against the rules of the sport. But like you're still doing it anyway, right? So you kind of have this like weird complication where you have to like compartmentalize how you think about, I guess, your training and like your mindset and like the fact that you're using Anavar throughout this process, et cetera. Like what does that self-talk look like? Like, what are you actually thinking, long before the drug test and all that sort of stuff, just as you're kind of going through this? Like, what are you saying to yourself about, I guess your own training?
Yeah. So it was kind of just like a justification. I mean, I don't mean to play a lupus card, but in my head, like, it was there. That was one reason why I like wasn't afraid of the side effects, I guess, or like what would happen, because Anavar is super mild. And so you look them up and it's like really like some people don't even experience any side effects. Like, I didn't. And just like thinking back to some of the medications I was on when I was younger, and it was like a light chemo medicine, which like can cause cancer. And like, so I'm like, if I'm going to take something, like, I want to take something that's going to like help me do something I want to do, And so that was like the original thing that made me think it was okay to do, or that it was safe to do. And I was still getting like labs done and everything. And like, it really didn't affect my lupus either way, to be honest. But, yeah, so I was kind of justifying it that way. And then since it was just like a pill with the rest of my supplements, I mean, it wasn't like I thought about it every day, but there would just be times where like we would all do a workout together, everyone at OPEX, and I would like come in last. And then it's just like, wow, like, I'm taking this and I'm still coming in last, and like, they're not taking anything, like, and they're, beating me or, whatever. So it was kind of like hard in that regard. And then I would just kind of go back to like, well, having lupus is a disadvantage. So like, this is just bringing me to their level. And like, I just still have more work to do. And like, that's kind of how I justified it to myself. And I'm just like so good at justifying things like that. So I like really believed it. And it would just be those random moments where I'd feel guilty. And then getting caught at regionals just like totally snapped me out of that, where it was like, this is not okay. Like, there was no justification that could make me think it was okay at that point. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's, I think that one of the things that you mentioned that's most interesting is just that it becomes routine, right? That you don't like, I mean, I personally take a bunch of different supplements and I have like a little pill thing, and it's like, I don't necessarily pay attention to what I'm taking every day. It's like, it's not like I'm thinking about taking L-theanine at night every single day because it's mixed in with like 4 other things. You're just like, I take it. And then periodically when the bottle runs out, I'm like, oh yeah, I should buy more L-theanine. I mean, is it just kind of like that? Like, you're not even really,
Yeah, it was kind of just like that. Yeah. And when I bought it, like, I bought like to where it was just like I had it. So it wasn't like I was continuing to buy, and it wasn't like I wasn't on it all year, you know. So it was just like one of those things where it's like, yeah, I would just fill my pill box, and it would just be those bad workout days where I would get down on myself. But when I first moved out here and I wasn't taking anything, like everything was great. And like, I was really just loving training and all of this, just like being in Arizona and everything. And then it was like, I started getting caught up in it, and yeah, it would just be the bad training days that I would just like get down on myself and start feeling guilty. So.
Yeah, and so it was really something you probably wouldn't think about much, except like you said, when you get smacked on some workout, and that kind of pushes you obviously into self-doubt, because I mean, no one likes getting beat, but then you're like, right. And I'm also cheating and I'm still getting beat. Like this.
Yeah, that was hard. So then that made me start questioning, like, okay, should I still be doing this? Like, you know, my main goal was like making regionals. Like, I definitely wanted to compete at the games, and like I had kind of changed that goal to be more like, maybe I'll eventually go team, but at the same time I was here training individual, and like the games are really intense now. I feel like they get harder every single year, and like, yeah, I just started not believing in myself anymore. So yeah, it was just like one of those things.
For sure. Something that I often hear from people who, have dabbled in performance enhancing drugs, right? Some of whom compete, some of whom don't, is kind of like their justification is actually that everyone else is doing it, right? That's a very common kind of like path for people to go down. It's like, well, they're all on this shit, so like it's not that big of a deal if I also take it. Was that part of your thought process at all, or no?
No. I mean, I definitely do think that like some people are, and there might be some people that like no one would expect to be on it, but definitely not everyone is on stuff. And that was obvious training at OPEX, because like there are certain things where like I almost feel like you could tell, and like I knew that they weren't on or taking anything. And so I think that was it too, is like actually training with elite athletes and being like it kind of made me realize like, no, like not everyone is on something to help with that, you know? So so that really wasn't something where I was like, oh, they're doing it, so it's okay. It was like, oh shit, like not everyone is taking stuff and they're still beating me. Like I think that was what got me more. Yeah.
Yeah. So for you, it was much more just about like, you know, your autoimmune condition and kind of like your history having to take a variety of like strange drugs for that. It's kind of easy to just sort of like go from one thing to the next based upon that. Is that kind of the thought process?
I didn't really think about it because of that. And like at the time I'm still not on any medication to help with my lupus specifically, just because it's been pretty much in remission. So it's kind of like, well, I used to take all this horrible stuff that like prednisone. I used to be on prednisone really high, like I said, like a light chemo medicine. It was like, so if I was taking that, like this has less side effects and isn't, so it made it seem like not as big of a deal, I guess, as far as what it was going to do to my body in the negative sense. And so I was just like, you know, on the positive side, I was like, oh, I'm going to get more energy. I'm going to recover faster. Like people with lupus usually take longer to recover because their immune system's like attacking other things, and like those justifications. And it was just like this cycle that like I couldn't break, especially because no one knew. So like I wasn't openly talking about it with anyone to where they could be like, hey, maybe like, you know, like point it out to me that I was justifying it like that. So.
Yeah. So you would say that prednisone is a gateway drug.
Yeah. Gateway drug. Yeah, sure.
Cool. Yeah. We'll have to start some sort of movement to stop people from using prednisone.
Let everyone know.
Yeah, exactly. We'll make like a what's that movie Reefer Madness, where it's like people smoke weed and like turn into like crazy zombies to sort of like scare people from using marijuana. Yeah, and make prednisone madness. It's the gateway drug. So I mean, with you've done a lot of work on, I guess, mindset in general, even before all this, you know, stuff has happened with getting drug tested and all that. So I mean, you're someone who has had the capacity to sort of like say the right things, so to speak, right? As far as like, it's about the process and, you need to detach from results and like just execute on a daily basis and not judge yourself too harshly. Like you've had the capacity to like say those things for a long time, but it seems clear that wasn't necessarily what was actually going on like inside your head. So tell me about that.
So when I first started my Instagram and like posting all of that, it was like the main way that I was like motivating myself. I would almost like brainwash myself. So I would sit there like looking up different quotes and like by people who had accomplished a lot, and that helped me then. But then like upon starting to take that and everything and just like the point where I kind of stopped believing in myself, I was still posting stuff like that almost to like try to convince myself of it. Like kind of like to remind myself, because originally that is what helped me like push as hard as I could all the time. So I was kind of like brainwashing myself in a sense. And so, I was putting it out there because like there were people that would reach out and say like, oh, thanks, I needed this today. And so that always felt good. But like looking back, it was definitely like me even trying to convince myself and remind myself of those things, even though I was struggling with it. But I think too, like if I were to like look back at my Instagram, there were days where like I stopped posting as many quotes like that, or I stopped posting as many positive things and was just kind of like posting to try to get my post in for the day. Cause like I didn't feel like posting anything like that. So there was like a little bit of a change there too, but I would say for the most part, it was just like me trying to convince myself and like, like, oh, you got to believe in yourself. And I would like sit there and be like, okay, like you can do this, but like saying it and then actually believing it is totally different.
Yeah. So it's you. Yeah. Like you mentioned, trying to convince yourself. That makes a lot of sense that, you are having these feelings of like self-doubt and like, comparing yourself to others and inadequacy. So you're like, all right, I need to do something about this. So I'm going to like kind of go down these rabbit holes of whatever quotes and meditation, et cetera.
Anything that, I was like pretty much scrambling for anything that could help. Yeah. Cause it was like I was starting to have the thought like, oh, I might not be able to make the games as an individual. But like prior to that, I never really had that thought. And actually like right after 2017 competing and like actually finishing better, like than I thought I would just by like getting in that right mindset, I was like ready to like go at it, like without taking anything. Cause I wasn't taking anything then, and so like I knew my mindset had changed and I was just like scrambling to try to save it. And I just couldn't. Like I was kind of checked out without realizing it. And like part of it, I think, was moving to Arizona because we started exploring nature more. And so I was kind of like, I had these things like, oh, when I'm done training, like we could live out of a van. When I'm done training, we could do this. And so it was almost like I realized my life was being put on hold too. And then that mixed with not believing in myself. Yeah, it was just kind of... Yeah. But at the same time, it was like all I'd known for 7 years. So I just kept doing it and like going to the gym every day and all of that. So it's kind of like I didn't know how to get out.
Yeah. You kind of created like pretty much everyone does this in some form or another with whatever like their life path is, right? You sort of create like a prison for yourself of like, well, I have these obligations in this routine and I'm just kind of like going to keep waking up and doing the same thing again. Cause that's what I did yesterday.
And it was like one of those things where it was like I was posting quotes to never give up. And then I was having these doubts that I didn't know if I could do it, which is like essentially like almost giving up. And so I was like, how can I just like announce that I'm done? Like I need to keep going after it, So it just like I didn't give myself the option. And then like I just didn't have time, nor did I really think to like look inward and realize that like I needed to move on, Like I shouldn't have been taking Anavar. Like I should have just been realizing that like maybe I need to move on to the next thing in my life, So it was like one of those things. Like now I realize that, And so I am glad that I got caught because like I said, like if I felt like I had to take something like that, I obviously stopped believing in myself and then it wasn't going to happen. So, which who knows if it would have been different if I would have just kept like doing what I was doing and training alone and believing in myself. Like maybe I would have placed higher. I don't know, but I was really happy with like I'll never forget 2017 and like that was like the best time I've ever had. And so like I'm glad I made it that far and did that and had fun with that. So
Yeah. And I guess what do you think would have happened if you hadn't been selected, for example? Would you have just continued like the same process of like, okay, well, I'm just going to train and like look up quotes because I don't believe in myself and just sort of like struggle? You know, I mean, like where do you think that breaking point would have been for you?
I mean, honestly, like, I do feel like I would have just kind of kept going with it. Like, okay, like, what do I need to work on now? And like, I would have just I was so set on just like fixing my mindset, but I was trying to fix it in all the wrong ways. So it wasn't going to happen. But yeah, I don't know if there would have been, because even if I would have gotten injured, I would have been like hobbling into the gym with a broken leg. Like, I wasn't going to stop. So it was kind of good, I guess, that there was like something like, okay, no, like you shouldn't be doing this. But yeah, I don't know, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know if it eventually clicked, or like if I would have eventually told someone, or but I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's impossible to speculate, but I do think that is kind of interesting, right? Where you had this event that just sort of like snapped you out of a bunch of almost like cognitive dissonance, where you have these just like compartmentalized aspects of what you're doing. And this event was just kind of like, hey, like you have to actually pay attention to all of this stuff at once. And you can't just like tell yourself little pieces of different stories at different times, right? So that's, like you mentioned, that could be illuminating and like, oh, okay, I need to figure out what I'm doing. But that, you know, for a lot of people, they're not going to have that like very clear moment of like, boom, something happens. Now you have to like figure your life out.
Right, right. So I think like looking back, it kind of goes back to like, even when I was working with you, you would always tell me like, get outside the gym, like do other things, like trying to tell me there's other things out there. And it's like, yeah, I was outside the gym. I went running for intervals. And it's like, no, that's still CrossFit. But like, I didn't get that. I was like, I am outside. So I was like so wrapped in it. But like now I actually get like what you would always try to tell me. And just like, yeah, find other hobbies and like realize there's a world out there besides this like CrossFit bubble. And so I think that's been nice. And that's also like helped me as I have realized that. So yeah, I was definitely trapped in there for a long time, a long time.
And then I guess, did you feel like a phony at all, like throughout this process? I mean, because you have, you know, like fans and followers, you know, like you said, who are like, oh, this is like so inspirational, like just what I needed today, like, you know, like shit like that. And then, you know, yourself, you're like, I'm only posting this because I don't believe it. And I'm trying to convince myself. Like, what does that feel like?
Yeah, that was pretty bad. I mean, I would still like, part of it's the coach in me too, where it was like, someone would like reach out to me and say like, oh, this really helped me today. And it's like, I would respond back and be like, yeah, you know, keep going. And I would just try to honestly, I would put myself back to like when I first started CrossFit, because when I first started, I was nowhere near I didn't have pull-ups or anything. And so like, it did help me up to that point. So I would just think back to that time, but I was feeling kind of fake, like, okay, like I'm not really believing in this. And like, it also negatively affected my performance, because in feeling fake, I'm like, okay, should I even be training like this and like pushing that hard? Because I don't believe in myself. So yeah, it definitely was like, it did make me feel kind of fake. I started posting about like lupus, and I had a lot of people with lupus reaching out to me about like supplements I was taking. And it was like, I mean, for that respect too, like I wasn't going to tell anyone to take anything like that, or like even to like try to get Vyvanse, which I felt like was helping me with energy, just because like I knew it wasn't right, or that it wasn't the best thing to do, but it was like my choice. And so I would feel guilty when they would like reach out and be like, how are you able to train that hard and have energy to do that? Like I could hardly get out of bed today. And I would just like give them every recommendation I could that I knew was like actually good for you. But I still knew, like, in my mind, it was like, well, and I'm taking Vyvanse, which helps with energy, but like, I wasn't going to say that. And so like, I did feel guilty when it came to stuff like that. But like I said, at the same time, I didn't feel like it should be something that everyone's taking. So it was more just like my choice. So. Yeah.
And yeah, you're in a tough position there, where you have people, I mean, essentially asking you for medical advice too, which is kind of like, like what, like I'm a person on Instagram, like,
I mean, I would literally, like the stuff, I would just tell them the stuff that I've tried that's worked the most, but it was all stuff like fish oil, turmeric, probiotic, like stuff like that. And just like meditation, like not being stressed out, like the basic things I would tell like a client coming into the gym. So the coaching side of me, like, kind of had that covered, I guess. And so I was able to like remove myself as an athlete, which I think is why I'm a good coach, is that like when I'm coaching, I think back to like when I first started CrossFit and like how I learned all these skills and like what things I wish people would have told me right away. And that's usually like, that is what I tell people I'm coaching. You know, I don't think to what I'm doing now or what I was doing then. I mean, you know, so that's not the average person.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. So that's a good point too, that, you know, a lot of people reaching out and asking questions, you know, look up to people who are athletes in the sport, who treat it as a sport, and that, you know, they're not training anywhere near the level as people who are competing. So it's kind of like, you know, comparing apples to oranges in terms of what they're actually looking for, but that they're inspired by the people who are competitive. So it's like a weird dynamic there.
Yeah. So I would just like put myself back to where I was before and be like, well, I didn't start doing 2-a-days. Like I started by doing this first. So start with like a walk and then build up this way. And so it was like the coaching side of me that was coming out when it came to that.
Yeah. So I guess when you actually started taking Anavar, are you just like poking around online and you like just Google buy Anavar and you're like, all right, sweet, like set up recurring subscription? Like what do you?
No. So I actually watched Bigger, Faster, Stronger on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that was the first. So it's been like twice. So the first time I ever took it, I wasn't even competitive. So then I didn't even have that. It was a friend who was telling me to take it, and they really made it seem like it wasn't that big of a deal. And then they got it for me that time. That was before I even started working with you. Yeah. So it was like before I was even like competitive in the open, like there was no, you know, yeah. I still didn't have butterfly pull-ups type of thing.
For sure. And as a coach too, I mean, I've definitely coached people who are not competitive at all, who have used Anavar or something similar just because they're like, I just want to try this and like maybe I'll get super shredded. Like it's just kind of like, you're like, oh, okay. It's kind of weird. It would never occur to me, but like, all right, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. It's kind of like a personal choice. And like, if it's not going to affect other people, I still believe like, whatever, like do what you want to do. But obviously like by me taking it when I'm actually being that competitive, it is affecting other people as far as points go. So yeah, like the first time it was like, I didn't have that on my mind at all. And it was more just like the side effects and like it being okay. And I wasn't on it long because I usually like recommend like shorter cycles. And it was just like, oh, that made me feel really good and really strong and cool. Like that was fun. And then I just kind of like forgot about it for a while. And then moving here, like I said, like it was great at first. And then like coming around to the open, I like wasn't feeling ready for the open. And like, I was just like kind of starting to freak out inside. And I was like trying to think of anything I could do to like be ready. And like my mindset wasn't there. And so then that's when I like started thinking about it again. And I just like, so I mean, I guess technically like one person knew, but they're not even in CrossFit. And it was like, and so like they just got it for me. And like they were the only person that knew. So I don't even know where they got it from, which was bad because obviously it was contaminated. So yeah. Yeah,
because that's actually something that's anytime you're dealing with like a black market type of situation like that, that it's you just actually kind of don't know what you're going to get.
Right.
That there's a book, I don't remember exactly what it's called. It's like the ultimate guide to steroids or something like that, right? It's and it actually has like, this is from a while ago, but has lists of like all the different steroids and like where to buy them and which cap color on the bottle means it's manufactured in which plant, like all this crazy stuff. Yeah. And you know, this guy has done this extensive research in terms of like, oh well, this is actually like this stuff is pure, whereas this stuff that comes from Italy is like always contaminated, so don't get that. And it's just like, it's a super complicated thing. And if you aren't like actually researching it yourself and like, you know, I mean, you don't know what's even happening with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. And I was like super naive and like not being smart at all when it came to that, because I was just so wrapped up in like, oh my God, like I'm going to make myself look ridiculous. Like I'm not even going to make regionals this year. Like, and so I was just like scrambling to do anything. So I honestly didn't even like research where it was coming from or anything, which was like not smart at all. So that could have been like dangerous. So like, I'm actually like, and that was one thing too, like when I got caught right away, like once I saw the results, I was almost grateful right away. And I think that helped because it was like, shit, like I didn't even think about the fact they could be contaminated with that many things. And then that could possibly be really bad for my health, like taking one thing, like I knew what that could have done, but then like throwing other stuff in there, it's like, you don't know, and that's not safe. So
yeah. And that there's tons of horror stories of people taking like crazy contaminated supplements too. Cause like a lot of supplements that were going around on bodybuilding forums at one point would just actually be laced with like real steroids, right? Cause then people would take it and be like, whoa, like this totally works. Like I put 45 pounds on my back squat, and it's like, yeah, it like has actual like literal steroids in it. That's why. But you know, it's not necessarily listed. And then there's that small percentage of people that do have some sort of like serious adverse reaction to that. And it's like, this dude just thought he was buying some like muscle gain supplement on a bodybuilding forum, and now he's like, he ruined his liver. Like,
right. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's a dangerous, dark world out there.
Yeah. Shady.
So, I mean, you mentioned this a second ago, is that, you're like afraid that you're not going to make regionals, right? And that would sort of like, you'd look ridiculous, that would reflect badly on you, that like, I don't know what, there was a fluke previously. I mean, what's kind of your thought process there?
I think it was more just like, I didn't feel like my conditioning was there. And so like the workouts in general just weren't feeling as fun. So I remember like 2017, like I felt ready. And so like doing burpees was almost like fun for me, because it was like, this feels great. Like I feel like, like I've done so many of these, like it's good. And I had the right mindset, and like, it was more of a struggle because I couldn't get in the right flow. And so like when you're doing the workout, it's just infinitely worse when you can't get in that mindset of just like going anyway, and actually enjoying it. And so, it was just like, had to do with that. What was the question again? Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, I just that for you sort of said something like, you would have made yourself look ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Just because like, since I had made it the year before, I felt like I needed to make it again. And like the fact that I literally uprooted my whole life to come to Arizona, which was supposedly going to make me better. And I didn't feel like it was at that time. Now, like my technique got way better on a lot of my lifts and all this. And like, honestly, strength was my biggest thing. So like, that was what we were focusing on. And so like, my conditioning was going to take a hit. And like James and Mike were more focused on the big picture over the course of like multiple years, knowing that it should take multiple years to build that kind of strength. Whereas I was like, I think I was kind of starting to check out, because I was starting to realize there's more out there. And I was kind of putting all these things off to the side until I was done competing. And so I do think that contributed to like me not believing in myself. So it was like, well, like 4 more years, kind of seemed like a lot longer then. So I guess that was me putting pressure on myself, because like nobody ever was like, oh, you better make it, or like, oh, I can't wait to see you compete. Like everyone was just like, do the best you can. Like, that's all. And so I was lucky to have that support. And then I was still just putting that pressure on myself. So.
And does that pressure come from yourself, or does that pressure come from yourself because of what you think other people's expectations of you are?
Yeah, it could be, honestly. Just like my perception of how people see me. And then based on that, I'm like setting these expectations for myself, and then like getting frustrated when I don't feel like I'm meeting them. So I definitely think that plays a part in it for sure.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily someone telling you that you have to do this, but you sort of like telling yourself you have to do it, and that you think someone is telling you have to do it at the same time.
Yeah. Like they're supporting me. So I like, it's like they're cheering me on. So like they want me to do well. So then it's like I'm putting that pressure on myself to do well, to like please them maybe, but it's like not as clear cut as that. There's like a lot going on in there.
Like what?
But I definitely think it was more me putting it on myself. So.
Yeah. And with any sport like CrossFit, obviously there's like winners and losers, right? That's like, if you win, then you beat somebody else. So for you, I mean, one of the things that people kind of lash out at you a bit for is like, well, what would you say to, the person who finished 25th in the Open who didn't get to go to regionals, like because of you or something like that, right? I mean, it sounds like that for you, you're not necessarily even thinking about that. I mean, what is your thought process surrounding that?
Yeah, I really wasn't thinking of it. So I guess like that could be selfish. Like I might have, like I was so just into like how I was going to get myself there that I really didn't think about that. I mean, and then it wasn't like I finished, like if I didn't I hardly made regionals. You know, I was like 3 spots out. And so like, I really didn't know if I was going to make it. So especially at that point, it's like, well, it's not like I'm finishing like second and like taking away someone's second place spot, you know? So I think that was part of the reason why like I never really thought about it. Cause it was like, well, I still didn't do well. And so it's like, yeah, I guess whoever was below me, like, yeah, they would have had that spot. But at the same time, like, it's not like they finished 21st and like I finished 20th. It was more just like, what, like 26th, and you know what I mean? But I mean, again, like, it doesn't make it okay. It was just how I was justifying it at the time.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because I was taking a spot away from someone, you know?
Yeah, because I want to clarify that I'm not trying to be like, oh, like, you know, give me your best excuses or whatever. I think it's more
Right.
like it's interesting to sort of, for you, like, having perspective now to kind of like retroactively look back and be like, how was I explaining that to myself?
Yeah, like, why did I think it was okay? Yeah, so like everything I'm saying, like, I know it's not okay now, and I'm not like justifying it now, but that's just what I was wrapped in to like then. So
Yeah, because I think it's something that you know, every human has a remarkable capacity to convince themselves of just about anything that they want.
yeah,
Right. And that, you know, we're all doing it all the time, like way more. And, you know, you read like a psychology textbook or something, you're like, oh yeah, I see everyone else doing that. And it's like, yeah, you are too. Like, you're definitely also doing that. So just like, you know, for you having that massive perspective shift, I think gives some like major insight into what that process was like for you. You know, like you've mentioned, like, okay, well, this is what I was actually thinking, and this is how I justified it to myself.
right. And since I was so wrapped in that, I never thought to myself like, oh, I need to reflect because I'm doing something wrong. It was more just like I just kept staying in that same cycle. You know, whereas like after it happened, it was like, wow, I really need to look inward because I was doing something wrong. And then that's what made me realize it. But I mean, you don't know what you don't know. So like at the time, like I didn't realize how well I was justifying it. I just had myself so convinced that I believed it. And yeah, it like kept going with it. So
yeah. And it sounds like you believed it like most of the time. Some of the time you weren't even thinking about it. And then you'd have these like occasional periods of just like extreme guilt and self-doubt.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely like did feel like a kind of a, now that I don't feel it anymore, there was definitely a huge conflict like going on within me, like in general, to where like, I just didn't feel like, I mean, you could call it whatever you want, like maybe like in line with the universe, I guess, or like what I should be doing. Whereas like now everything I'm doing with my life, it's like, it just feels right, you know? So, yeah. There was definitely, but I just like didn't see it at the time. And since no one knew, no one could point it out to me.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, it can almost sound like a cliche to be like, oh, like I'm grateful that this happened, et cetera. Right. That, that can sound almost like trite or insincere. But I mean, I think what you're sort of saying is that, you know, it's expensive to justify something like that to yourself all the time, right? That there's like a lot of like mental cost to like going through that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's actually been crazy because like, I'm like I said, I'm not taking any supplements. Like I have my multivitamin and like, just like the basic fish oil, stuff like that. And I've still been training, trying to figure out like where I'm going next. So I haven't stopped that. Like the first day I didn't have programming. I like almost had a mental breakdown. And then like,
you're like A1, A2.
Yeah, like, I don't know what to do. Like
Part C, please.
Yeah. So Austin started programming for me, and then the time I work out now, I'm at the gym by myself, and so like I'm not putting expectations on myself. I'm just lifting and just like at first it wasn't fun, but like gradually just kind of doing whatever, and like I'm actually hitting like stronger numbers than I was when I was taking it because I feel more energized. Part of it could be that I did cut my training back a little bit. But I definitely think more of it had to do with just like that being so heavy on me and taking so much mental energy I didn't realize at the time. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's just, it's so mentally expensive to like constantly sort of like running that program that's like, oh, but like you're also doing this thing and like no one can know and whatever, that just really, I mean, it can wear you out, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So for you now, I mean, you're training, but not necessarily with like a specific goal. You're trying to move into a van. I mean, what's the deal? Like, what is your? I mean, you said you had all the stuff you want to do, like post CrossFit. Like, what are you doing?
So originally, like afterwards, after it happened, I was like, okay, I need to find something else to compete in. Like, I need something to fill this hole. And like, one thing I have always wanted to do is like do Spartan races and like get my trifecta where you do all 3 races in 1 year. And like, that may be something I do now, but it's like in general, it's funny how I've been progressing through all of this. And like, I realize that like competing right now isn't the best thing for me. Like I need to like accept where I'm at and just like, not take any bad supplements and just like be happy with what I'm doing. So like Austin's programming for me and like gearing it towards weightlifting just because I enjoy snatching and doing clean and jerks. And I have some conditioning days so I can still hike 14ers. So like I am still training in regards to that. I've actually been getting really into yoga. The meditation and all of that has been really good for me.
Yeah, a spiritual journey.
Yeah. So I have been doing like strength yoga every morning, which is like fun because it's like actually way harder than you would think it's going to be, but at the same time, it's still calming. And then doing the weightlifting stuff. And then as far as like what I'm doing outside that, it's like, I'm still coaching. I'm doing some medical billing like for work. And then we got this van thing going on, which has been nice. Because yeah, it is like, make me realize there's so many possibilities out there. Like now I can do anything I want with my life. And so it's like, I'm just staying open to like wherever I feel like the next step is. And then this van thing, we just started talking about it. And then it was like, yeah, this feels right. Like, let's just go for it and like see what happens. And that is one of those things I was like trying to hold off until after training. So now it's like, all right, like now I could go for it. And
yeah.
So that's
yeah, it's like if your goal is to compete in a sport at a high level, that just kind of like gives you tunnel vision. It's like you can't even consider anything that will like interfere with your ability to sleep or recover or eat like specific weights of food and all that sort of stuff. So it's like all of a sudden you just have this massive expansion of like possibility, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, I was getting so crazy with it. Like one thing that sucks is I can't eat as much food. So I was like, I can't eat 300 carbs a day anymore. So that's been hard to adjust to. But like, I didn't realize how much stress, like even just like making that much food was putting on me because I was like, oh, I have to make these gains. Like I can't lose strength. Like I need to eat enough. And so just like letting all of that go has been really nice. And it's like, yeah, I'm still like working on increasing strength, but I'm not stressing about it because I'm not competing. You know what I mean? So it's more just like, okay, like, yeah, I guess I'll eat dinner now, but like if it's too late to eat dinner, I don't feel like eating, I'm not going to eat. And it's like, fine. But it was like, even just food, I didn't realize that was causing stress. So yeah, it has really just opened up like everything. And that's why it's kind of been like, well, maybe I shouldn't compete for a while. So maybe I should just like kind of let go of things and like not be so crazy about it and then kind of see where life takes me.
So something that I've seen from a lot of people who are competitive in a sport and move past it is like a very like all or nothing type of thing, right? Where they move from, I mean, in your case, right? How long were you training on a daily basis?
Oh, since I started CrossFit, like 7 years.
No. I mean, like hours in the gym, like when you were competing.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, right. So I mean, that's a huge time commitment. And then and then when people move past that, like that going back to okay, I'm going to work out an hour a day, 3-4 days per week, that they just don't do it at all. That it's either like this extreme commitment thing or it's absolutely nothing, right? And that they maybe are burnt out on that process of like, okay, I have to get myself to the gym, I have to make all my food, I have to recover, and then not having to do that they just go completely away from it. So, I mean, it sounds like for you that you actually have settled into like a more, I guess, like medium routine. Do you feel that push to go all or nothing, or is that just like not really part of this for you?
So when it first came out and everything, and like I said, the first day I didn't have programming, I freaked out. Like I know that in the past, even before CrossFit, I've always loved fitness, and like fitness and working out is what has always like helped me deal with life situations. And then it was like all of a sudden I found like the one thing that like helped me the most with my hardest like life situations I've had to deal with was like the thing that was causing that problem, like CrossFit fitness. But it was like, I don't have to, like, CrossFit isn't, there's more fitness out there than CrossFit. Like, you could still work out and like, you don't have to be training for CrossFit. So that's why it was just like, you know, I had Austin start programming for me, and I was just like, he's still, so my sessions, I've been working on cutting them back and not taking so much time, but it's been gradual. Cause like, if I were to just go and do a class workout, I think that would like affect me to where I'd be like, all right, like this isn't the same. Like I'm not getting the same, like it doesn't feel right. And like that would have been hard. So he's kind of been like easing me back. And I've been working on like not spending so much time warming up because I could just kind of jump into it and like get it done type of thing. So that's been nice. So yeah, I did actually like, I have been kind of settling into a happy medium and like just finding what I enjoy. And then when we're traveling, like we went to Colorado for a while. At first I was like, oh, what gym are we going to go to? And Austin's like, well, we're going to be hiking a lot. And then I'm like, well, if because he's still training like he normally would. And I'm like, and he's kind of realizing that there's other things out there too, but he's trying to take a different approach this year by not hyper focusing on CrossFit and like trying to find a healthy balance where he can still compete. And in his case, I think it's going to help him. And so that kind of like made me, it's like, well, if he's still competing and he can go a couple days out training, like it's not a big deal. And that's been good. You do have a lot more time in a day.
Yeah. It's like, oh, wow, I can like do all these chores.
Yeah. So I've been just like slowly easing back and like finding that medium and making sure like I do prioritize the right things, because fitness has been a priority for so long. And it is like, I do believe that like everyone their health should be a priority, but to a certain extent. Like I said, like I don't need to spend like 5 hours a day working out, but like for me to give myself 2 hours in the middle of the day just to like get a workout in, like, yeah, that's good if like that's what helps me, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And I think you touched on something there just about, fitness being like a passion of yours for a while, and then trying to sort of like reconnect with that in, I guess, like a non-outcome oriented way, right? That, I mean, you almost see something similar with a lot of musicians where, you know, a lot of kids are like dreaming of like being a rock star, and they dream of like being able to make money from their music or like have people come to their shows. And then when you spend time around people who have actually gotten to that point, like a lot of them are just burnt out, and like they don't necessarily hate it, but it's not what people think it is, right? That people are like, oh, it has to be so awesome or whatever. And it's like, they don't want to go on tour. Like they don't like being away from their family. Like they wish that they could actually just like have some stability. They're tired of playing the same songs over and over again. And they obviously still, you know, enjoy music, but it's like, it's kind of corrupted for them because it has become like an actual chore to get through it.
Yeah. And that's what I feel like it was turning into for me, for sure, at the end. Yeah. Like it was more like, oh man, this workout's going to kill me today, instead of being like, oh, I'm excited for this. Like, let's see like what I can get on it, you know? But like, I was so wrapped up in it, I just kept going. So. Yeah.
You've already gone so far down like a certain road that, I mean, like you said, you posted all the quotes about not quitting. You're like, never ever quit. Like,
I'm like, how can I stop? But like at the time I wasn't like sitting there thinking that, you know, but that's what was happening in my head, like without me realizing it. Now that I look back, I realize it.
Yeah. It's like, never ever change your mind. Never quit.
Yeah.
Never ever.
Keep going. 5 hours a day, every day.
Yeah, exactly. Great. So Megan, you are going to move into a van soon. Are you going to post about that on Instagram?
Yeah, we actually made a van Instagram.
Oh, of course. Is the discount code VAN10?
Working on that. No, it was actually funny because my mom found this like these towels that are supposed to be antimicrobial. She's like, this would be perfect for a van. Like, I'm going to connect you. You can post on your Instagram. And like, I'm just like, we don't even have the van yet. Just like, yeah. So, so we do have an Instagram that we're going to be like posting the stuff we do, partially because Austin wants his Instagram to be more just about his training. So when we do hikes and stuff too, we'll be posting on there even before we have the van. We just started that last weekend. And then, I mean, it's my Instagram, I haven't been posting. I've actually been like busy and just like enjoying life and like not scrolling through Instagram. Like I actually went I've been going all day without going on at all. And so I haven't been posting a lot. And so I've been kind of thinking of what to do and what to go as far as that goes. But I have been getting really into yoga. So I'm maybe I'll kind of go that route and post about yoga and stuff. But, I don't want to force anything anymore. So I'm just kind of when I feel like posting, I'll post. And I just want to be real, I guess.
Yeah. And it's difficult because, especially for a lot of people who are athletes who have sponsorships and all that kind of stuff, it's kind of your job and you're expected to be posting on Instagram. And then you're, especially posting motivational quotes and things about focus and all that kind of stuff, on a medium that's essentially designed to just suck people's attention. So it's this weird kind of dark thing where it's all you need is focus. And it's just I hope 40,000 people are not doing anything productive right now and are just looking on. Yeah.
Remembering to stay focused. Yeah.
So who knows?
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a weird world that we live in. So what's the handle for your van?
At van.in.progress.
Oh, great. Is that gonna change when the van exists?
Yes. Okay. And then I'm not sure what it'll be yet. I mean, we started it last weekend and we were going to start posting just the process of getting rid of our stuff. Cause that's actually been really interesting too. Just as self-reflection. Cause it's I had this dresser my mom made and that was actually really hard for me to give up, even though I literally wasn't even storing much in it at all. But it was just in my room, and it was just something that was my mom made it for me. And it was actually hard to put it up. And then when I sold it, it was hard to barter the price. The person I sold it to said she was a single mom and whether she was lying or not, maybe. But I still gave it to her at a cheaper price. It just made me feel good. And it's I'm not that dresser. I don't need to attach to that, as being mine. So it's actually been a good process, to go through and just getting rid of all this stuff. And the regional signs, I took them down and yeah, I mean, when we move in a van, I'm probably just going to get rid of them. It's not going to mean that I'm going to forget the memories of it. It was fun. It happened. I'll never forget that. But at the same time, I don't need a sign to tell me that, I guess.
Yeah. Does your mom know that you sold the dresser?
She does. She does. She was okay with it. At first, she was freaked out about the whole van thing. But now she's like, all right, if that's what you want to do. Yeah.
Cool. Very, very supportive.
Yeah.
Very, very supportive. Okay, great. Yeah. So people can check you out in your van. They can follow your journey of giving away your stuff and learning to disconnect from social media on social media.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing. So since we've been doing all this, we really haven't posted because I'm not on social media, but it's I feel people need to know this, but it's yeah, how are you going to tell them? Cause I'm not on there. So I also have been writing more. So I've been trying to stick to a certain amount of words per day. Cause I've always wanted to write a book and now I have the time. So I'm trying to prioritize that a little bit more. And eventually come out with a book. I'm not sure what it's going to go towards. I just know that I love writing. And so hopefully it'll likely be something to help inspire people, just share things I've gone through. It might be a little bit more geared towards lupus. It might not. So just kind of writing and seeing where it goes.
Thanks for listening all the way through. I admire your grit, your persistence, and your perseverance. Since you made it, I have a few favors to ask of you. Go ahead and open up the show notes on whatever podcast player you use. In there, you'll find links to all the resources that were mentioned throughout the show. There's also some links there in which you can leave a review or subscribe to the show. And podcasters are always harping on this because this actually makes a difference in terms of the algorithms that recommend podcasts to new people. So if you do that, it helps more people find the show. And if you head over to toddneef.com, you can sign up to receive most of my thoughts and writing, which really only go out to the email list. A lot of it never makes it to the blog or the podcast. So if you like what I have to say and you want to see some of my recommendations and stuff that I've been checking out, go ahead and subscribe to that email newsletter as well.